I've survived worse than you, son. Those were the last words Eli Mercer heard before realizing he just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because the blonde woman standing in front of him, the one he'd shot 3 hours ago, wasn't trembling, wasn't begging, wasn't even bleeding anymore. She was smiling. And behind her, 240 Harley-Davidson motorcycles idled in the darkness like a mechanical heartbeat waiting for her signal. Before we dive into how a single gunshot turned a quiet coastal town into a war zone, hit that subscribe button and stick with me until the end of this story. Drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Trust me, you won't believe where this goes. The glass door of Murphy's Diner swung shut behind Damon Hayes at exactly 6:47 p.m. on October 18th, 2024. He didn't notice the cold. 30 years on a Harley had burned the chill out of his bones. What he noticed was the smell of fried onions, diesel exhaust, and the salt air rolling in from Blackwater Bay. Home smells, safe smells. Steal you riding out tonight or what? The voice belonged to Marcus Grinder Thompson, a mountain of a man with a beard down to his chest and hands like catcher's mitts. He stood beside 3 other Hells Angels, all of them leaning against their bikes in the diner parking lot, leather cuts gleaming under the streetlights. Nah, Damon said, fishing a toothpick from his pocket. Told Sarah I'd be home by 8. Kid's got a soccer game tomorrow. Grinder laughed a sound like gravel in a blender. Domestic life's making you soft, brother. Soft's keeping me alive, Damon shot back. You should try it. That's when he saw her. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, army surplus jacket, 2 grocery bags in her hands. She was crossing the street about 50 yards down, heading toward the apartment complex on the north side of Harbor Road. Damon didn't know her name yet. Didn't know she'd spent 12 years as a combat medic. Didn't know she'd pulled 19 soldiers out of burning vehicles in Kandahar. All he knew was that she moved different. Head up, eyes scanning, weight distributed like she was ready to react. Military, he thought. Definitely military. Then he saw the gun. It happened in the space between heartbeats. A figure in a dark hoodie stepped out from the alley between the diner and the hardware store. Right hand coming up, moonlight catching on black metal. Damon's brain screamed, run, but his legs wouldn't move. 30 years of riding hard hadn't prepared him for this. For the casual inevitability of a gun barrel rising to point at his chest from 20 feet away. He was going to die in a diner parking lot in Blackwater Bay, Washington. He was never going to see his daughter's soccer game. The blonde woman dropped both grocery bags and sprinted. Not away from the gun, toward it, toward him. Damon saw her face for exactly 1 second before impact jaw set eyes wide, every muscle in her body committed to a decision that made no logical sense whatsoever. She hit him like a linebacker. They went down together, his back slamming against the asphalt, her body covering his, and the gunshot was so loud it turned the world into a ringing silence. Pain exploded across Damon's chest, and for a terrible moment, he thought the bullet had found him anyway. Then the woman above him gasped, her whole body going rigid, and he felt something warm and wet soaking through his shirt. Not his blood. Hers. Jesus Christ, Grinder was running. Marcus was running. The whole parking lot was moving now, chaos erupting in every direction. But the woman, this stranger who'd just taken a bullet meant for him, she wasn't screaming. She was trying to get up. Stay down. Damon grabbed her shoulders, feeling the sticky warmth of blood on his hands. Stay the hell down. Shoot her, she gasped. Alley, dark hoodie, 5'8", maybe 5'9", running. She coughed and blood flecked to her lips. Running east. Damon stared at her. You just got shot and you're giving me a goddamn description. Occupational hazard. She tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. Someone want to call 911, or are we just going to bleed here all night? Grinder was already on his phone barking their location to the dispatcher. Marcus had his .45 out scanning the alley where the shooter had disappeared. 2 other angels were running toward the street trying to spot the bastard. But Damon couldn't look away from the woman beneath his hands. She was pale shock, setting in fast, but her eyes were clear, focused, calculating. What's your name? He asked. Claire. Her voice was getting quieter. Claire Bennett. Claire, I'm Damon. You're going to be okay. You hear me? You're going to be fine. I know. She was looking at her shoulder now at the dark stains spreading across her jacket. Through and through, miss the artery. I'll live. How the hell do you know that? Because I've patched up worse in the back of a Humvee going 80 miles an hour through Helmand Province. Her eyes found his. You Hell's Angels. Damon nodded. Figures, Claire whispered. Just my luck. Save a biker, end up in a war. Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp in his arms. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours while Damon held pressure on Claire's wound and watched her breathe. Shallow. Too shallow, but steady. The paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher and Damon stood there in the parking lot, his shirt soaked red, watching the ambulance lights disappear around the corner. Brother, Grinder's hand landed on his shoulder. You good? Damon wasn't good. His hands were shaking. His chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it. But he was alive, because a woman he'd never met had decided his life was worth more than hers. Find him, Damon said quietly. Already on it. Marcus saw which way he ran. We got brothers tracking. No. Damon turned to face Grinder and something in his eyes made the bigger man step back. I don't want 3 guys tracking. I want everyone. Call the chapter presidents. Call Seattle. Call Portland. Call every goddamn angel from here to California. Grinder's eyes widened. Steele, that woman took a bullet for me. For us, she didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate, just dove into the fire. Damon's voice was cold now, controlled. Someone tries to kill me, that's business. But they hit her instead. That's family. She's not family. We don't even know her. She's family now, Damon said. Blood makes it real, and I want the man who spilled hers. Grinder was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. This is gonna get big. Good, let it get big. Let it get so big that every 2-bit criminal from here to the border hears about what happens when you come after one of ours. She's not one of ours. She is now. By 9 p.m., the word had spread through the Hells Angels network like wildfire through dry brush. Phone calls, text messages, encrypted apps lighting up across 3 states. A veteran took a bullet for Steele Hayes in Blackwater Bay. Someone tried to kill a brother and hit a civilian instead. A woman, a soldier, someone who'd served her country and came home to peace only to get shot saving a stranger. The response was immediate. In Seattle, chapter president Thomas Reaper Morrison shut down a card game and told his boys to fuel up. In Portland, VP Jackson Smoke Williams interrupted his daughter's birthday party to make calls. In Eugene, Tacoma, Spokane, Bellingham, from urban chapters to rural crews to nomads who hadn't seen a clubhouse in months, the message was the same. Ride to Blackwater Bay, now. By 10 p.m., the first out-of-town bikes started rolling in, 5 from Seattle, 8 from Portland. A dozen nomads who'd been camping near Mount Rainier. By 11 p.m., Harbor Road looked like a motorcycle convention. Harleys lined both sides of the street. Leather cuts with different chapter patches, mixing together. Men who normally operated in their own territories now standing side by side, unified by one simple fact. Someone had tried to kill one of theirs and hit a hero instead. Damon stood in the parking lot of Murphy's Diner, now roped off with police tape, and watched the bikes arrive. Every engine that rumbled into town felt like a promise, like thunder building before a storm. 200 and counting, Grinder said beside him. This is the biggest gathering we've had since the national run in 2008. Damon didn't respond. He was watching the hospital across the street where Claire Bennett was in surgery. The doctors had said she'd live, said the bullet had passed clean through her shoulder, missing major vessels. Said she was lucky. Lucky. Damon didn't believe in luck anymore. He believed in choices. And Claire had made a choice that saved his life at the cost of her own blood. That kind of choice demanded an answer. Boss? Marcus jogged up, phone in hand. We got something. One of our guys, Paulie from the South chapter, he was working the docks today. Says he saw Eli Mercer hanging around the shipyards this afternoon. Mercer, Damon's jaw tightened. The piece of shit who's been running guns for the Scorpions. Same one. Word is he's been trying to prove himself. Wants to be a made man with their crew. So he decides to take a shot at a Hell's Angel to earn his patch. Damon's laugh was bitter. Goddamn amateur. Gets better, Marcus continued. Paulie says Mercer's been staying at a scrapyard out near Cedar Creek. Old place owned by the Scorpions. They use it to strip bikes and store contraband. How many scorpions? We talking? Maybe a dozen at the yard, but they got connections. They call for backup. We could be looking at a full-on war. Damon looked around at the 200 bikers now filling the streets of Blackwater Bay, at the leather and chrome and loyalty, at the brothers who dropped everything to ride through the night because one of their own had been targeted. Let them call, he said quietly. Let them bring everyone they got. At midnight, Damon walked into Sacred Heart Hospital through the emergency entrance. The nurse at the desk took one look at his blood-stained shirt and leather cut and reached for the phone. I'm here to see Claire Bennett, Damon said before she could dial. The woman who got shot tonight. The nurse hesitated. Are you family? Yes, it wasn't technically true, but after tonight it felt true enough. The nurse studied him for a long moment, then pointed down the hallway. Third floor, room 312. She's out of surgery but still sedated. Damon rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. When he reached the third floor, he found Claire's room at the end of a quiet corridor. She was asleep. An IV drip fed into her left arm. Her right shoulder was wrapped in thick bandages and her face was pale against the white pillow. But she was breathing, steady and strong. Damon pulled a chair up beside the bed and sat down. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to thank someone for saving your life when thank you felt like the smallest, most inadequate words in the English language. So he just sat there, watching her breathe, watching the monitors beep, watching this stranger who'd become something more. You're an idiot, you know that. The voice was weak but clear. Damon's head snapped up. Claire's eyes were open, unfocused but aware. You should be resting, he said. You should be at home with your family, not sitting in a hospital room with the moron who tackled you. That moron saved my life. Claire's lips twitched. Reflex, saw a gun, saw a target. Old habits. Old habits like taking bullets for strangers. Old habits like protecting people who can't protect themselves. She tried to shift in the bed and winced. Jesus, forgot how much gunshots hurt. You've been shot before. Twice? Fallujah in 2009, Kandahar in 12. This one's actually cleaner than both of those. Damon stared at her. You're insane. I'm a medic. We don't think. We just react. Her eyes focused on I now, really seeing him for the first time. You okay? Am I? Damon couldn't finish the sentence. You took a bullet for me, and you're asking if I'm okay. You look pretty shook up when I hit you. Wanted to make sure you didn't have a heart attack or something. Despite everything, Damon laughed. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks to you. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then the shooter. Did they catch him? Not yet, but we will. We, my brothers, the club, they were coming in from all over. How many brothers we talking? Last count about 240. Claire's eyes widened. Jesus Christ, over family. And like it or not, you're family now. I'm not a biker. You're a soldier who took a bullet for a brother. That's closer than blood. Damon leaned forward. The man who shot you, his name is Eli Mercer, small-time gun runner trying to earn his way into a rival crew. We know where he is, and we're going to end this. Claire was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, harder. When you find him, I want to be there. You just got out of surgery. I don't care. He took his shot. I want to look him in the eye when you take yours. Damon studied her face, the set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes. This wasn't bravado. This wasn't shock talking. This was a soldier who understood that some debts could only be paid in person. Okay, he said finally. When we ride, you ride with us. Claire nodded once, then her eyes drifted closed again. The pain meds were pulling her back under. Damon stood up to leave, but before he reached the door, Claire's voice stopped him. Damon, yeah, thank you for not treating me like I'm fragile. Anyone who sprints toward a gunshot isn't fragile, Damon said. You're a warrior, and warriors deserve respect. He left her sleeping and took the elevator back down to the parking lot where 240 Harleys waited in the darkness like a promise of thunder. Grinder met him at the entrance. Well, she wants in, Damon said. When we find Mercer, she rides with us. She can barely stand. She's a combat medic who's been shot 3 times and lived. I think she can handle one more fight. Grinder shook his head, but he was smiling. This is going to be one hell of a story. It already is, Damon said. Now let's go finish it. At 1 a.m., Damon stood before 240 brothers in the parking lot of Murphy's Diner. The police had given up trying to control the crowd. The whole street was bikes and leather and barely contained rage. Listen up, Damon's voice cut through the rumble of idling engines. Most of you don't know me personally. Different chapters, different territories. But tonight we're all the same. Tonight we're all brothers. The crowd quieted, every eye on him. A few hours ago, someone had tried to kill me, tried to put a bullet in my chest right here in this parking lot. But they didn't succeed. You know why? Because a woman, a veteran who served 12 years in combat zones, saw what was about to happen and made a choice. She didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but she ran into that bullet anyway. Damon paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. Her name is Claire Bennett, and right now she's lying in a hospital bed with a hole in her shoulder because she decided my life was worth saving. That kind of courage, that kind of sacrifice. That's what we're supposed to be about. That's what this patch means. He tapped his chest where the Hells Angels insignia sat over his heart. Brotherhood, loyalty, standing up for what's right even when it costs you blood. The silence was absolute now, 240 men holding their breath. The man who shot her is named Eli Mercer. He's hiding at a scrapyard out near Cedar Creek, protected by the Scorpions. He thinks he's safe, thinks we'll let this slide because she's not wearing our patch. Damon's voice dropped to a growl. He's wrong. A roar went up from the crowd. Engines revved, fists pumped the air. We ride at dawn, Damon shouted over the noise. And when we find Eli Mercer, he's going to learn something real important. You don't get to shoot a hero and walk away. Not in my town, not on my watch, not while we've got breath in our lungs and fire in our engines. The roar became deafening. 240 voices raised in fury, 240 engines screaming for justice. Damon felt it in his chest, the raw power of Brotherhood united. This wasn't about territory anymore. It wasn't about club politics or rival crews. This was about something older, something primal. This was about making sure that courage was rewarded and cowardice was punished. This was about showing the world that some things still mattered. At 5 a.m., as the first gray light of dawn touched the eastern sky, Claire Bennett signed herself out of the hospital against medical advice. The nurse argued, the doctor threatened. But Claire had spent 12 years in war zones, ignoring people who told her what she couldn't do. She walked out of Sacred Heart Hospital with her arm in a sling, painkillers in her pocket, and fire in her eyes. Damon was waiting by his bike. You look like hell, he said. You should see the other guy, Claire shot back. Get ready for this. Claire looked past him at the ocean of motorcycles filling every street, every parking lot, every available inch of pavement in downtown Blackwater Bay. At the leather and chrome and controlled violence waiting to explode. I've been ready for this my whole life, she said. I just didn't know it until tonight. Damon handed her a helmet. Then let's go finish what you started. She climbed onto the back of his bike, her good arm wrapping around his waist. The pain in her shoulder was a living thing screaming with every movement. But pain was an old friend. Pain meant you were alive. At exactly 5:47 a.m., 12 hours after the shot that changed everything, Damon Hayes raised his fist to the sky. 240 engines roared to life in perfect unison. And as the sun broke over Blackwater Bay, the largest convoy of Hells Angels in Pacific Northwest history rolled out into the dawn, headed for a scrapyard where a coward waited and justice demanded an answer. Claire held on tight as the bike beneath her vibrated with barely restrained power. Her shoulder screamed, her head pounded. Every rational part of her brain said this was insane, but she'd stopped listening to rational the moment she saw that gun. Now she was committed to the fire. And God help anyone who stood in the way. The vibration of the Harley traveled up Claire's spine like electricity. Every pothole sent fresh waves of agony through her shoulder, but she kept her grip tight around Damon's waist, refusing to show weakness. Behind them, 239 more engines created a sound like the end of the world. You good back there, Damon shouted over the wind. Claire pressed her face against his leather, cut-tasting blood in her mouth from biting down too hard against the pain. Just ride. They took the coastal highway north, a serpent of chrome and fury stretching for nearly a mile. Early morning commuters pulled over and stared. Some filmed on their phones. Others just watched with their mouths open as the convoy thundered past. Grinder rode up alongside them, his massive frame dwarfing his bike. Cedar Creek's 20 minutes out. You want us to hit them all at once or scout first? All at once, Damon called back. No warning, no mercy. What about police? They'll stay back. They always do when we ride in numbers like this. Claire felt Damon's body tense beneath her arm. He was coiled tight, ready to explode. She understood that feeling, had lived with it for 12 years in uniform. The moment before action, when your whole body became a weapon waiting to be unleashed. Damon, she shouted, when we get there, let me talk to him first. The hell you will, you can barely stand. That's exactly why it'll work. He thinks he won this. Let him see what he actually hit. Damon was quiet for 3 heartbeats. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. They passed a gas station where a teenage clerk stood frozen with a coffee pot in his hand, watching the bikes roll by. An old man on the sidewalk actually saluted. A woman in a minivan pulled out her phone and started live streaming. This is going viral, Claire muttered. Good, Damon said. Let the whole world watch what happens when you come after family. The word hit Claire harder than she expected. Family. She hadn't had family in 8 years. Not since her parents died in a car crash while she was deployed. Not since she came home to an empty house and realized the army was the only home she had left. And now she was riding with 240 bikers who decided her blood made her one of them. The absurdity of it should have made her laugh. Instead, it made her want to cry. They turned off the highway onto a rural railroad that cut through dense forest. The morning sun barely penetrated the canopy, leaving them in a twilight that felt like riding through a dream or a nightmare. Marcus pulled up on Damon's other side, his .45 visible in a shoulder holster. Got word from our scout, 12 scorpions at the yard, maybe more inside the buildings. They know we're coming. How? Someone posted video of us leaving town. It's already got 50,000 views. Claire felt Damon curse under his breath. Changes nothing. We still outnumber them 20-1. Unless they called for backup. Then we outnumber the backup too. They rode in silence for another 5 minutes before the trees began to thin. Up ahead, Claire could see the scrapyard, a sprawling wasteland of rusted metal and broken vehicles surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. And standing at the gate, exactly as promised, were the scorpions. Damon raised his fist and the entire convoy slowed, engines dropping to an idle rumble that sounded like distant thunder. The lead bikes formed a line facing the gate, while the others fanned out in a semicircle that completely surrounded the property. Claire climbed off Damon's bike, ignoring the screaming pain in her shoulder. Her legs were shaky, but she locked her knees and stood tall. The scorpions watched them with the nervous energy of men who knew they were outmatched but had nowhere to run. Their leader, a scarred man with a shaved head and neck tattoos, stepped forward. This is private property, Hayes. You got no business here. I got plenty of business here, Vic. Damon's voice was cold. You got a rat named Eli Mercer hiding somewhere in this junkyard, and I want him. Vic's eyes flicked to Claire, taking in her sling and pale face. She the one who got shot. She's the one who took a bullet meant for Mithikamesin, which makes her family, which makes Eli Mercer a dead man walking. We don't know nothing about no shooting. Bullshit. Marcus stepped forward, his hand resting on his pistol. We got 3 witnesses who saw Mercer at the docks yesterday bragging about earning his patch with scorpion blood. And we got security footage from the hardware store showing him in that alley with a gun. Vic's jaw tightened. Even if that's true, you can't just roll up here with an army and demand, watch me. Damon cut him off. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring Eli Mercer out here right now, or we're going to come in there and get him ourselves. And if we have to come in, we're going through every single one of you to do it. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the engines seemed to quiet, waiting for Vic's response. You're talking about war, Vic said finally. No, war is what happens if you don't give him up. This is justice. Claire took a step forward, her boots crunching on gravel. Every eye turned to her. I just want to talk to him, she said quietly. 5 minutes, that's all. Vic stared at her. You're the vet. 12 years Army, combat medic, 3 tours. Claire's voice didn't waver. I've pulled men out of burning trucks. I've held pressure on wounds that should have been fatal. I've watched brothers die in my arms. And last night I took a bullet for a stranger because it was the right thing to do. She took another step forward, closing the distance between herself and Vic. Eli Mercer shot me because he wanted to prove something, because he thought killing a Hell's Angel would make him a man. Claire's voice hardened. I want 5 minutes to show him what kind of man he actually is. Vic looked past her at the ocean of bikes and leather, at 240 men who'd ridden through the night for one purpose, at the sheer overwhelming force of Brotherhood unified. 5 minutes, he said finally. Then he's yours. Vic turned and walked back through the gate. Two other scorpions followed him into a corrugated metal building at the center of the yard. You sure about this? Damon asked Claire. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's the most honest thing anyone said all morning. They waited in tense silence. Claire focused on her breathing, using the pain in her shoulder as an anchor. Pain meant alive. Pain meant standing. Pain meant facing the man who had tried to take both away from her. The door to the building opened, and 3 figures emerged. Eli Mercer looked exactly like what he was, a scared kid playing at being dangerous. Maybe 25 at most, thin and wiry, with the kind of face that probably got overlooked in every room he'd ever entered. When he saw Claire, he actually smiled. You're supposed to be dead, he said. Claire felt every muscle in her body go rigid. Behind her, she heard Damon take a step forward, but she held up her good hand. Disappointed, she asked. Eli shrugged. Just surprised. I aimed for center mass. Figured you'd bleed out before the ambulance arrived. You figured wrong. I've survived worse than you on my worst day. Doesn't matter. I still made my point. Shot at a Hell's Angel and lived to tell about it. You shot a veteran who was walking home with groceries, Claire corrected. And the only reason you're alive right now is because 240 bikers are letting you breathe long enough for me to look you in the eye. For the first time, genuine fear flashed across Eli's face. He glanced at the bikes surrounding the yard, at the men standing beside them like an army waiting for orders. They won't do nothing, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. Cops are probably already on the way. Cops won't get here for another 20 minutes minimum, Damon said. Plenty of time. Eli's eyes darted between Claire and Damon. Time for what? That depends on you, Claire said. She took another step forward, close enough now to see the sweat on Eli's forehead. I want to know why. Why me? Why that moment? Why did you decide my life was worth throwing away for some bullshit gang initiation? It wasn't personal. You put a bullet in my shoulder. It's pretty goddamn personal. Eli looked away, unable to hold her gaze. I needed to prove myself. Scorpion said if I wanted in, I had to do something big. Take out a Hell's Angel. Show I had the stones. So you picked the one standing alone in a parking lot. Opportunity? Cowardice. Claire's voice cut like a blade. You didn't challenge him to a fair fight. You didn't give him a chance to defend himself. You hid in an alley with a gun and waited for the perfect moment to shoot him in the back. That's strategy. That's being a coward. Claire stepped even closer until she was inches from Eli's face. You want to know what bravery looks like? I saw a stranger about to die, and I ran toward the danger. Not away from it, toward it, because that's what soldiers do. That's what real men and women do. We stand between the innocent and the harm, even when it costs us everything. Eli's jaw was trembling now. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you did. You didn't just shoot me. You created a ripple effect that brought 240 warriors from across 3 states. You started something you can't finish, and now you have to face the consequences. I'll do time. I'll take whatever time. Damon's laugh was sharp. You think this is about jail? This is about respect. About showing every punk with a gun that you don't get to shoot heroes and walk away. Eli's eyes widened. You're gonna kill me. Claire shook her head slowly. No, killing you would be easy, would be quick, would let you off the hook. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. What we're going to do is worse. We're going to let you live. Confusion crossed Eli's face. What? You're going to live with what you did, with the fact that you aimed at a man's back and hit a woman who saved his life. You're going to live with the knowledge that 240 bikers know your face, your name, your family, your tans, that you can never show yourself in this state again without looking over your shoulder. Claire's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You're going to live in fear. Every single day, never knowing when we might decide mercy has an expiration date. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eli's face had gone from pale to gray, and Claire realized he was about to be sick. "That's worse than death," he whispered. "That's the point." Damon stepped forward and grabbed Eli by the collar, dragging him toward the center of the yard where all 240 bikers could see. Eli stumbled, nearly fell, caught himself. "Listen up," Damon's voice carried across the scrapyard like a whip crack. "This is Eli Mercer, the man who shot Claire Bennett, the man who thought he could earn his way into a gang by putting a bullet in a veteran's shoulder." The crowd stirred a low rumble of anger building. "We could kill him right now," Damon continued. "Easy as breathing. But that's not justice, that's just revenge. And we're better than that." He shoved Eli to his knees. "So here's what's going to happen. Eli Mercer is going to leave this state. Tonight. He's going to disappear and never come back. He's going to spend every day of his miserable life looking over his shoulder, wondering if today is the day we change our minds about mercy." Damon leaned down until his face was level with Eli's. "And if we ever see you again, if you ever set foot in Washington, Oregon, or California, if you ever touch a gun, join a gang, or hurt another innocent person, there won't be a second chance. There won't be a conversation. There will just be an ending. Do you understand me?" Eli nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face now. "I can't hear you." Yes, I understand." "Good." Damon straightened up and looked at Vic. "Get him out of my sight." Two scorpions grabbed Eli by the arms and hauled him to his feet. He was sobbing openly now. All pretense of toughness stripped away, revealing the scared kid underneath. As they dragged him toward the building, Eli looked back at Claire one last time. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry." Claire didn't respond, just stood there with her arm in a sling and blood seeping through her bandages, watching him disappear. When the door closed behind Eli, the tension in the air shifted. The immediate threat was over. Justice or something like it had been served. But Claire felt hollow, empty, like she'd just watched something die that could never be brought back. "You okay?" Damon's voice was soft now, concerned. "I thought I'd feel better," Claire admitted. "Thought facing him would give me closure or whatever." "Closure's a myth. You just learn to live with the weight." Speaking from experience, 30 years worth. Claire turned to look at the assembled bikers at the army that had materialized out of loyalty and rage. "What happens now? Now we ride home. Let the world see that we keep our promises and protect our own." "I'm not your own." Damon put a hand on her good shoulder, gentle despite his size. "Yeah, you are. You earned that patch the moment you stepped in front of that bullet. Blood and blood, out. That's how this works. I don't want to be in a gang. Then don't be, but you're family anyway, whether you like it or not." Before Claire could respond, a new sound cut through the morning air sirens. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. "Cops," Marcus said, jogging over. 4 cruisers, maybe 5. "Right on schedule," Damon said. He turned to address the crowd. "Nobody starts nothing. We did what we came to do. Now we ride out, clean and quiet." The bikes started up in waves, a rolling thunder that drowned out even the sirens. Claire climbed back onto Damon's Harley, her body screaming in protest. The police cars arrived just as the convoy began to move out. Officers emerged with hands on their weapons, but made no move to stop the exodus. They were outnumbered 40-1, and they knew it. One officer, a grizzled sergeant with gray hair, caught Damon's eye as he rode past. Damon nodded once. The sergeant nodded back. Some things didn't require words. As they rolled back onto the highway, Claire felt her phone buzzing in her pocket. She pulled it out awkwardly with her good hand and nearly dropped it when she saw the screen. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and her social media notifications had blown up to the point where the app had stopped counting. "What the hell?" she muttered. She opened Facebook and her heart stopped. The video from the diner parking lot had gone viral, 50 million views in 12 hours. The grainy footage showed everything: Eli raising the gun, Claire sprinting forward to the shot, the blood. But it was the comments that made her stomach turn. "Hero. Absolute legend. This woman is what America needs right now. I'd die for someone like her." There were news articles too. Local stations had picked up the story, then regional, then national. CNN had a piece titled "Veteran Takes Bullet for Stranger Sparks Massive Biker Rally." Fox News was running with "The Blonde Warrior of Blackwater Bay." Claire felt sick. I'm famous, she said numbly. Damon glanced back. What? The video. It's everywhere. I'm trending on Twitter. Welcome to the 21st century. Nothing stays private anymore. I don't want to be famous. I just want to fix boats and live my life. Too late for that. Damon's voice wasn't unkind, just honest. You did something remarkable. World's gonna want to know about it whether you like it or not. They rode in silence for several miles, the convoy gradually spreading out as bikes peeled off toward their home chapters. By the time they reached Blackwater Bay, only 30 remained, the local crew and a few stragglers. Damon pulled into the parking lot of Murphy's Diner, the same place where everything had started less than 24 hours ago. The police tape was gone, but the bloodstains on the asphalt remained. Claire stared at the dark patches where she'd fallen, where her blood had mixed with rain and motor oil, where her life had changed forever. You need a hospital, Damon said, killing the engine. I need a drink. You need both. Claire climbed off the bike and immediately her knees buckled. Damon caught her before she hit the ground and suddenly she was crying. Not from pain, though God knew there was plenty of that, but from exhaustion, from relief, from the sheer overwhelming reality of what she'd just survived. I got you, Damon said, holding her steady. I got you. I'm sorry, Claire gasped between sobs. I don't know why. You don't have to apologize for being human. You've been running on adrenaline and stubbornness for 12 hours straight. Crash is inevitable. He helped her to a bench outside the diner and sat beside her while she cried herself out. The other bikers kept their distance, giving her space to fall apart without an audience. When the tears finally stopped, Claire felt scraped hollow. Raw, like every protective layer had been stripped away. Better, Damon asked. No, but more honest. That'll do. A black SUV pulled into the parking lot and a woman in her 50s climbed out. She wore slacks and a blazer and carried herself with the kind of authority that made Claire automatically straighten her spine. Mr. Hayes, the woman said, approaching them, I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. I need to ask you both some questions about this morning's events. We didn't touch him, Damon said immediately. Check with the Scorpions. Check security footage. We rode out there, talked to Mercer, and left. That's it. Morrison's eyes flicked to Claire. And you, Ms. Bennett, you agree with that assessment? Yes, ma'am, we just talked. 240 bikers surrounded a scrapyard and you just talked. That's right. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying Claire's face. Then she pulled out her phone and showed them a video. It was cell phone footage from one of the Scorpions showing the entire confrontation, showing Claire's words, showing Eli's tears, showing Damon's ultimatum. This has been forwarded to my department anonymously, Morrison said, along with documentation of Eli Mercer's criminal history and evidence linking him to the shooting. Seems someone wants to make sure we have everything we need for an arrest warrant. Funny how that works, Damon said neutrally. Morrison almost smiled. Indeed, I'm told Mr. Mercer left the state approximately 2 hours ago, last seen heading east on I-90. Good riddance. My thoughts exactly. Morrison pocketed her phone. Ms. Bennett, you should know that you're being called a hero. The mayor wants to give you a commendation. The VFW wants you to speak at their next meeting, and I've had 17 media requests for interviews just this morning. Claire felt her stomach drop. I don't want any of that. Unfortunately, what you want doesn't matter anymore. You're a symbol now, whether you asked for it or not. A symbol of what? Morrison looked at her with something like pity. Of everything people wish they could be. Brave, selfless, willing to sacrifice for a stranger. She paused. The world needs heroes, Ms. Bennett, and right now, you're it. She handed Claire a business card. When you're ready to talk, and you will be eventually, call me. I can help manage the media circus. Morrison walked back to her SUV and drove away, leaving Claire staring at the card in her hand. She's right, you know, Damon said. This isn't going away. I know. Claire crushed the card in her fist. But I can ignore it for a few more hours. Fair enough. What do you want to do? Claire looked at the bloodstains on the asphalt, at the diner where Damon had been eating pie before someone tried to kill him, at the street where her ordinary life had ended and something else had begun. I want to go home, she said finally. Take a shower, sleep for about 16 hours, and then figure out what the hell comes next. Sounds like a plan. Damon drove her to her apartment in his truck. Claire's bike was still at the hospital parking lot and walked her to the door. You going to be okay alone? He asked. I've been alone for 8 years. I think I can handle one more night. You're not alone anymore. You got family now. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the presumption that one act of instinct had bought her a lifetime of brotherhood, but she was too tired, too wrung out. Thank you, she said instead, for everything. Thank me by healing up and staying alive. I don't want to have saved you just to watch you fall apart. He left her at the door, and Claire stumbled inside, kicking off her boots and collapsing onto the couch without even turning on the lights. Her phone was still buzzing with notifications, messages from old army buddies, friend requests from strangers, interview requests from news outlets. She turned it off and threw it across the room. In the darkness of her apartment, Claire finally let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. The fear, the pain, the absurdity of becoming a viral hero for doing what any decent person should have done. But beneath it all was something else, something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Purpose. She'd spent nearly a decade drifting, working odd jobs, fixing boats, trying to forget what it felt like to matter. And then in one moment of instinct, she'd mattered again, had saved a life, had started a movement, had become family to people she'd never met. Claire closed her eyes and let sleep take her, knowing that when she woke up, nothing would ever be the same again. The pounding on Claire's door started at 6 a.m., 3 hours after she'd finally fallen asleep. She jerked awake, her shoulder exploding with fresh pain as she moved too fast. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in Kandahar, that the pounding was mortars hitting the compound. Then reality crashed back and she remembered. The shooting, the convoy, Eli Mercer's terrified face. The pounding continued. Claire Bennett, this is Channel 7 News. We'd love to talk to you about your heroic actions. Claire's blood went cold. She stayed frozen on the couch, barely breathing, hoping they'd give up and leave. They didn't. Ms. Bennett, the whole country wants to hear your story. Just 5 minutes of your time. More voices joined the first. Different stations, different reporters, all of them wanting the same thing: to turn her private moment of instinct into public entertainment. Claire grabbed her phone off the floor where she'd thrown it and powered it on. Immediately it started buzzing with notifications, but she ignored them all and called the only number that mattered. Damon answered on the second ring. You okay? There are reporters outside my apartment, at least 6 of them. Shit, stay inside, I'm sending someone over. Damon, I can't live like this. I can't hide in my own home because... You won't have to. Just give me 20 minutes. He hung up before she could argue. Claire limped to the bathroom and caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes. Her shoulder bandage had bled through during the night, leaving a rust-colored stain. She looked like exactly what she was: a woman who'd been shot less than 24 hours ago and refused to stay in the hospital. She managed to shower using one hand and plastic wrap to keep the bandage dry. By the time she emerged, the pounding had stopped. Cautiously, Claire crept to the window and peered through the blinds. The reporters were still there, but now they were kept back by a line of motorcycles. 8 Hells Angels stood between Claire's door and the media, arms crossed, faces impassive. Grinder caught her eye through the window and gave a small nod. Claire felt something break loose in her chest. These men, strangers 48 hours ago, were now standing guard outside her apartment like she was precious cargo. Her phone rang. Damon again. You see them? He asked. Yeah, how long are they staying? Long as it takes. Marcus is bringing food. Jenny's coming over with fresh bandages, and I'm working on getting you out of there without the vultures following. I have a job, Damon. I have to open the shop by 9. Not today, you don't. Called your boss. Told him you're taking medical leave. Claire's jaw tightened. You had no right to. You got shot saving my life. I got every right to make sure you heal properly. His voice softened. Let us help you, Claire. You spent 12 years taking care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine, that she didn't need help, that she could handle this on her own. But the truth was she couldn't. The truth was she was exhausted and in pain and terrified of what came next. Okay, she whispered, but just for today. We'll start with today and see where it goes. 20 minutes later, there was a gentle knock at her door. Not the aggressive pounding of reporters, but the careful tap of someone who understood boundaries. Claire opened it to find a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a braid. I'm Jenny, she said, holding up a medical bag. Grinder's wife, used to be an ER nurse before I got smart and quit. Mind if I check that shoulder? Claire stepped aside and let her in. Jenny moved with practiced efficiency, cutting away the old bandage and examining the wound with the detached professionalism of someone who'd seen worse. Clean entry and exit, Jenny said. No infection yet, but you're pushing it. You should be in a hospital bed, not running around on motorcycles. I've heard that already. Then you should listen. Jenny started cleaning the wound with antiseptic that burned like fire. You know what sepsis is, right? What happens when an infection gets into your bloodstream? I'm a combat medic. I know exactly what sepsis is. Then act like it. Take your antibiotics. Change the dressing twice a day, and for God's sake, rest. Jenny worked in silence for several minutes, her hands gentle despite her stern words. When she finished bandaging the shoulder, she pulled out a bottle of pills. Painkillers, real ones, not the over-the-counter stuff. Take them when you need them. Don't try to tough it out. I don't like pills. Nobody does. But pain slows healing. Your body needs to rest, not fight a war against itself. Claire accepted the bottle reluctantly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just heal. Jenny packed up her supplies. And Claire, what you did out there, taking that bullet, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever heard. Haven't decided which yet. Can it be both? Jenny actually smiled. Yeah, it can be both. After Jenny left, Marcus arrived with enough food to feed a small army. Sandwiches, fruit pasta salad, and what looked like an entire pie. Grinder's mom cooked, Marcus explained, setting the bags on Claire's tiny kitchen counter. Said any woman tough enough to take a bullet deserves a proper meal. I don't even know Grinder's mom. You do now. She's already claiming you as a granddaughter. Told me to tell you she expects you for Sunday dinner next week. Claire felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. This is too much. I don't deserve... Stop. Marcus's voice was firm, but not unkind. You saved Steele's life. That makes you family. And family takes care of each other. End of discussion. He left before Claire could argue further. She stood alone in her apartment, surrounded by food she hadn't asked for, protected by guards she didn't know, part of a family she'd never wanted to join. And despite everything, she felt safer than she had in 8 years. Claire forced herself to eat, knowing her body needed fuel to heal. The food was incredible, clearly made by someone who knew their way around a kitchen. As she ate, she finally allowed herself to check her phone. The messages were overwhelming. Old army buddies asking if she was okay. Former patients she'd treated in Afghanistan thanking her for her service. Complete strangers offering prayers and support. But one message stood out from the rest. It was from an unknown number with a 202 area code. Washington, D.C. Ms. Bennett, this is Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Williams, U.S. Army. I served as your commanding officer during your second tour in Afghanistan. I saw the video. I'm not surprised. You were always the bravest soldier I ever had the honor of leading. If you need anything, and I mean anything, call me. You earned it more than a shoulder wound. You earned our gratitude. Again. Claire read the message 3 times, her vision blurring. Colonel Williams had been the one person in the Army who truly understood her, who'd seen past the quiet exterior to the warrior underneath. She started typing a response, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. Finally, she just wrote, "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." His response came back immediately. "The offer stands. Always." Claire set the phone down and took one of Jenny's painkillers. Within 20 minutes, the sharp edge of agony dulled to a manageable throb. She was just closing her eyes when her phone rang again. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Bennett." The voice was male professional with a slight southern accent. "My name is David Chen. I'm a producer for 60 Minutes. We'd like to feature your story in an upcoming segment about everyday heroes." Claire's stomach dropped. "I'm not interested. I understand you're recovering from your injury. We'd be happy to wait until you're feeling better. We could even come to you." I said no. "Ms. Bennett, people need to hear your story. In a time when the news is full of division and hatred, you represent something pure, something good. Don't you think the country deserves..." Claire hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. She declined the call. It rang again, and again, and again. Finally, she turned it off and threw it back across the room. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "It's Damon," a voice called. Just me? Can I come in? Claire opened the door to find him holding a laptop and looking uncomfortable. Brought you something, he said, stepping inside. Figured you should see what people are saying before it gets worse. Worse than reporters camping outside my door. Yeah, worse than that. He opened the laptop and pulled up YouTube. The video of the shooting now had over 100 million views. The comments section had exploded into a war zone. Some called her a hero. Others said she was stupid for risking her life for a criminal. A few claimed the whole thing was staged, and a disturbing number were making her into some kind of political symbol, proof that veterans were being failed by the system, evidence of American courage ammunition for whatever agenda they wanted to push. This is a nightmare, Claire whispered. It gets worse. Damon clicked to another tab. Someone doxed you, posted your address, your phone number, your employment history. It's been shared about 50,000 times. Claire felt the room tilt. They what? We're working on getting it taken down, but it's like playing whack-a-mole. Disappears from one site and pops up on 3 others. So everyone knows where I live. Everyone can find me. Yeah, which is why we need to move you. Claire's head snapped up. No, this is my home. I'm not running. You're not running. You're being smart. Right now you got reporters outside. Tomorrow it could be obsessed fans. Next week it could be someone who disagrees with what you did and wants to make a point. You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic. You're famous now, Claire, and famous people are targets. Claire wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to turn back time to 2 days ago when she was just a mechanic who fixed boats and lived quietly and didn't have to worry about strangers knowing her address. Where would I even go? She asked, defeated. I got a cabin about 40 miles north, up in the mountains, off the grid. No internet, no cell service, just peace and quiet while this dies down. It's not going to die down. Maybe not, but it'll evolve. Right now you're fresh news. Give it a few weeks and something else will grab people's attention. Some celebrity scandal or political disaster. You'll fade into the background. And if I don't, Damon was quiet for a long moment, then we deal with it when it happens. But right now, today, you need space to heal without cameras in your face. Claire looked around her small apartment, at the life she'd built from nothing, at the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. Then she looked at the laptop screen at the comments from strangers dissecting her choices, claiming to know her motivations, turning her into something she wasn't. How soon can we leave? She asked. Hour, pack light, bring clothes, medications, anything you can't live without for a few weeks. My boss is going to fire me. Already talked to him. You're on medical leave with full pay. He saw the video, said you're welcome back whenever you're ready. Claire wanted to feel grateful. Instead, she just felt hollow, like her life had been taken over by forces beyond her control, and she was just along for the ride. She packed a duffel bag with shaking hands. Clothes, toiletries, the photo of her parents she kept on the nightstand, her father's dog tags from Vietnam. When she emerged from the bedroom, Damon was on his phone arguing with someone. I don't care what the network wants. She's not doing interviews, not now, maybe not ever. A pause, because she's a human being, not a content farm. Find someone else to exploit. He hung up and saw Claire watching. Sorry, that was the 4th call in 10 minutes. How did they get your number? Same way they got yours. Internet makes privacy impossible. They left through the back entrance, avoiding the reporters out front. Grinder and Marcus ran interference while Damon loaded Claire into his truck. As they pulled away, she saw the reporters finally notice and start running toward them, cameras raised. Damon gunned the engine and they were gone before anyone could get a clear shot. They drove north in silence, leaving Blackwater Bay behind. The further they got from town, the tighter Claire's chest became. She was running, hiding, letting fear dictate her choices. I hate this, she said finally. I know. I spent 12 years in war zones, faced down enemy fire, pulled people out of hell, and now I'm running from reporters like some scared kid. You're not running. You're making a tactical retreat. Big difference. Feels the same. Damon was quiet for several miles. Then, you know what I learned in 30 years with the club? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a fight you can't win. Reporters want a story. You give them access, they'll bleed you dry. You disappear for a while, they'll move on to easier targets. And if they don't, then you deal with it from a position of strength, on your terms, not theirs. They turned off the main highway onto a dirt road that wound up into the mountains. The trees closed in around them, thick and dark, blocking out the afternoon sun. After another 20 minutes, Damon pulled up to a small cabin nestled in a clearing. It was simple, just one room with a loft, a wood stove, and windows that looked out over a valley that seemed to stretch forever. No neighbors for 5 miles, Damon said, killing the engine. No internet, no cell service, just you and the forest. Claire climbed out of the truck, her shoulder screaming in protest. The air was different up here. Cleaner, quieter. The only sounds were wind through the trees and the distant call of a hawk. I stocked the kitchen yesterday, Damon said, carrying her bag inside. Got firewood stacked out back. Generator if you need power, but try to use it sparingly. Propane for the stove and water heater. He was moving around the cabin, showing her where things were, but Claire wasn't listening. She was staring out the window at the valley below, feeling the weight of the past 2 days finally crash down on her like an avalanche. Claire, you hearing me? I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be the person everyone thinks I am. Damon crossed to her and gently turned her around to face him. Then don't be. Be who you actually are. A woman who saw danger and ran toward it, who took a bullet and survived, who looked her attacker in the eye and chose mercy over revenge. He paused. That's already more than most people accomplish in a lifetime. It wasn't mercy, it was exhaustion. I was too tired to want revenge. Same result either way. Claire felt the tears coming again, and this time she didn't fight them. She cried for the life she'd lost, for the anonymity she'd never get back, for the simple peace of fixing boats and being invisible. Damon held her while she sobbed, his massive frame somehow gentle, his presence more comforting than words could be. When she finally ran out of tears, he stepped back and handed her a bandana from his pocket. You're going to be okay, he said. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you will. How do you know? Because you're a survivor. I've seen enough people in my life to know the difference between someone who breaks and someone who bends. You bend, and that means you'll snap back. He left her standing in the cabin with promises to check in every few days to bring supplies to make sure she had everything she needed. As his truck disappeared down the dirt road, Claire felt the silence close in around her like a physical thing. She was alone, truly alone. For the first time since the shooting, there were no cameras, no reporters, no well-meaning bikers trying to take care of her. Just her and the pain and the impossible task of figuring out who she was supposed to be now. Claire spent the first day sleeping. Her body finally given permission to rest shut down hard. She woke only to take painkillers and drink water before falling back into dreamless oblivion. The second day she was restless. She paced the cabin despite the pain, feeling trapped by the four walls, even though she'd come here voluntarily. By the third day, she was ready to climb out of her skin. That's when she found the journal. It was sitting on the small desk by the window, a leather-bound notebook with blank pages and a pen tucked into the spine. A note was paper-clipped to the front in Damon's handwriting. Sometimes writing it down helps more than talking it out. D. Claire stared at the journal for a full hour before finally opening it. She started writing and couldn't stop. Everything poured out the fear when she saw the gun, the impact of hitting Damon, the white-hot agony of the bullet, the strange calm that had settled over her in the hospital. She wrote about facing Eli, about the convoy, about the reporters and the fame and the overwhelming sense that her life had been hijacked. She filled 20 pages in one sitting. When she finally set the pen down, her hand was cramping and her shoulder was throbbing. But her head felt clearer than it had in days. The journal became her lifeline. Every morning she woke and wrote. Every evening before bed, she wrote. The pages filled with questions she couldn't answer and fears she couldn't voice, and a growing understanding that her life would never return to what it had been. On the fifth day, Damon returned with groceries and news. Eli Mercer's been arrested, he said, setting bags on the counter. Picked up in Montana trying to cross into Canada. They're extraditing him back to Washington to face charges. Claire felt nothing. Good. There's more. The Scorpions have fallen apart. Vic and 3 others turned state's evidence. Gave up names, locations, everything. DA saying it's the biggest gang bust in state history. Because I got shot. Because Eli shot you, and we made enough noise that the cops couldn't ignore it anymore. Damon studied her face. How you holding up? I'm healing. That's not what I asked. Claire closed the journal she'd been writing in. I don't know how to answer that question anymore. Some days I'm fine. Other days I can't get out of bed. Most days I'm just angry. That who? Everyone. Eli for shooting me. You for making me family. The reporters for turning me into a symbol. Myself for being stupid enough to run toward a gun. That wasn't stupid. That was heroic. Heroic and stupid aren't mutually exclusive. Damon pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. You want to know what I think? Not particularly. I think you're punishing yourself for surviving. You spent 12 years in war zones watching people die. Good people. Young people. People who deserve to make it home just as much as you did. And you're still here while they're not. Claire's hands were shaking. You don't know anything about... I know survivor's guilt when I see it. I lost 6 brothers in 20 years with the club. 6 men who were riding beside me one day and gone the next. And for years I asked myself why I got to live when they didn't. What made me special? What made me worth saving? What did you figure out? That there is no answer. Life's random. Death's random. The only choice we get is what we do with the time we're given. He leaned forward. You were given a second chance when that bullet missed your heart. And you can either waste it hiding in the mountains feeling guilty, or you can figure out what you want to do with it. I don't know what I want. Then start small. What do you want for dinner? Despite everything, Claire almost smiled. Steak, medium rare. Now we're getting somewhere. Damon stayed for dinner cooking steaks on the cabin's tiny propane grill, while Claire sat on the porch and watched the sunset over the valley. They ate in comfortable silence, and for the first time in days, Claire felt something approaching peace. After he left, she opened the journal and wrote a single sentence. Maybe surviving is enough for now. The breaking point came on day 9. Claire was chopping firewood behind the cabin against Jenny's explicit orders when she heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. Not Damon's truck, something smaller, faster. She dropped the axe and moved to the side of the cabin where she could see the driveway without being seen. Her shoulder screamed in protest, but adrenaline overrode the pain. A silver sedan pulled into the clearing. A woman in her 30s climbed out expensive camera around her neck. Press credentials dangling from a lanyard. Claire's blood turned to ice. They'd found her. The reporter knocked on the front door. Ms. Bennett, I'm Rachel Torres from the Seattle Times. I just want to talk. 5 minutes of your time. Claire stayed frozen behind the cabin, barely breathing. I know you're here. Your truck's parked out back. I'm not going to leave until we talk. The hell you're not, Claire thought. She moved quietly to the woodpile and grabbed the axe, keeping it low but ready. Ms. Bennett, people deserve to know your story. The real story, not what the cable news networks are selling. You're being used as a political football, and you don't even know it. That made Claire pause. She edged closer to the corner of the cabin. The right wing's calling you proof that veterans are ignored by liberal elites. The left's using you to push gun control. Neither side cares about you as a person. They just want you as a symbol. Rachel's voice softened. I want to tell your actual story, in your own words. No spin, no agenda, just truth. Claire stepped around the corner, axe visible. How did you find me? Rachel didn't flinch at the weapon. I'm a reporter. Finding people is literally my job. That's not an answer. I followed Damon Hayes when he drove up here 3 days ago. Staked out his house until he made another supply run. Basic surveillance. So you stalked him. I prefer to call it investigative journalism. Claire's grip tightened on the axe handle. You have 30 seconds to get in your car and leave before I call the Hells Angels and tell them you're harassing me. Will you, though, because from what I understand, you've been avoiding everyone, including them. The observation hit too close to home. Claire's jaw clenched. 20 seconds. Rachel held up her hands in surrender but didn't move toward her car. I get it. You want privacy. You want your old life back. But that's not happening. The story's already out there. The question is who gets to tell it, tabloid reporters who'll make you look like either a saint or a psycho, or someone who'll actually listen. I don't want anyone telling it. I want to be left alone. then you're going to be disappointed because this story has legs. It's got heroism, violence, redemption, and a mysterious blonde veteran who vanished into the mountains. You're a legend now, whether you like it or not. Claire felt something snap inside her. 9 days of isolation, pain, and suppressed rage came flooding out in a single explosion of words. You want the truth? Fine. Here's the truth. I saw a gun and I reacted. That's it. No noble intentions, no heroic sacrifice. Just muscle memory from 12 years of training. I didn't think. I didn't choose. I just moved. Her voice was shaking now. And now my life is destroyed because I couldn't turn off the soldier in my head for one goddamn second. Rachel's eyes were sharp, calculating. That's the opening line right there. That's real. I'm not giving you a goddamn opening line. Why not? What are you afraid of? I'm not afraid of anything. Bullshit. You're terrified. I can see it all over your face. Rachel took a step closer despite the axe. You're scared that if people hear your real story, they'll realize you're not the perfect hero they've built up in their heads. That you're just a woman who made a split-second decision and now you're drowning in the consequences. Claire wanted to scream, wanted to throw the axe at this smug reporter who thought she understood anything about what Claire was going through. Instead, she lowered the weapon and said quietly, "Get out." Claire, I said get out now before I change my mind about calling Damon. Rachel studied her for a long moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. She set it on the porch railing. When you're ready to talk, and you will be, eventually call me. I promise I'll tell your story the right way. She climbed back into her sedan and drove away, leaving nothing but dust and Claire's barely contained fury. Claire stood there for 10 minutes after the car disappeared, gripping the axe so hard her knuckles were white. Then she walked to the porch, picked up Rachel's business card, and threw it into the wood stove. But the reporter's words stayed with her like a splinter under the skin. You're being used as a political football, and you don't even know it. That night, Claire broke her own rules and hiked to the ridge where she could get cell service. She powered on her phone and immediately regretted it. 417 new messages, 63 voicemails. Her social media accounts, which she hadn't checked in days, were flooded with comments and tags and shares. But worse were the articles. Blonde veteran proves America still has heroes. Fox News opinion piece using her to criticize the current administration's veteran policies. The Blackwater Bay shooting exposes America's gun violence epidemic. MSNBC segment barely mentioning Claire while pushing legislation. Woman who saved biker is perfect example of toxic masculinity in female form. Think piece from a feminist blog arguing that Claire's actions reinforce dangerous gender stereotypes. Rachel had been right. Everyone was using her, twisting her actions to fit whatever narrative they needed. Claire felt sick. She was about to turn off the phone when a text came through from a number she didn't recognize. I know you're hiding and I don't blame you, but there's something you need to know. Check your email. You're not going to like it. Rachel Torres. Claire's hands were shaking as she opened her email app. The most recent message was from Rachel sent 2 hours ago. Subject line, "This goes live tomorrow morning unless you talk to me first." She opened it and her vision tunneled. It was a draft article. The headline read, "The Troubled Past of America's Newest Hero, Claire Bennett's History of PTSD and 3 Prior Psych Evaluations." Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She scrolled through the article and horror reading details that should have been private sealed in her military medical records. Her diagnosis after her second tour. The nightmares. The incident where she'd nearly attacked a nurse who'd touched her shoulder without warning. The mandatory psych evaluations. The medications she'd been prescribed and refused to take. All of it laid out in clinical detail for the world to see. At the bottom of the draft was a note from Rachel. I got this from a source at the VA. I can kill the story if you talk to me. Exclusive interview. Your words, your truth. Otherwise, this runs tomorrow at 6 a.m. and every other outlet will pick it up by noon. Your choice. Clock's ticking. RT. Claire read the note 3 times before the full implications sank in. This wasn't journalism. This was blackmail. Talk to me or I'll destroy what's left of your privacy. Give me what I want or I'll expose your vulnerabilities to millions of strangers. Claire's phone rang. Rachel Torres. She answered without thinking. You absolute piece of shit. I prefer to think of myself as motivated. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice. You can control the narrative or you can let it control you. Those medical records are going to come out eventually. Someone will leak them. Might as well be on your terms. Those records are sealed. You obtained them illegally. Prove it, and good luck getting a journalist to reveal their sources. Rachel's voice was maddeningly calm. You have until midnight to decide. After that, the story runs with or without your cooperation. She hung up. Claire stood on the Ritchie, phone in hand, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. Below her, the cabin sat dark and isolated, a safe place that suddenly felt like a prison. She could call Damon, tell him what was happening, let the Hells Angels handle it the way they handled everything, with overwhelming force and loyalty. But what would that solve? Rachel was right about one thing: the records would come out eventually. And if Claire tried to suppress this story through intimidation, 10 more reporters would dig even deeper. She was trapped, cornered by her own fame and the insatiable appetite of a public that wanted to consume every detail of her life. Claire sat down on a fallen log and pulled out her father's dog tags from under her shirt. He'd carried them through 2 tours in Vietnam, had come home broken but alive, had spent the rest of his life trying to outrun the war, and in his head. What would you do, Dad? She whispered. But she already knew. Her father had hidden, had retreated into alcohol and silence, and eventually an early grave. He'd let the war win. Claire had promised herself she'd never make that mistake. She stood up, pocketed the dog tags, and made a decision that terrified her more than any firefight ever had. She was going to tell her own story, on her own terms, before anyone else could tell it for her. Claire called Rachel back at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the deadline. I'll do the interview, she said without preamble, but I have conditions. I'm listening. You kill the PTSD story completely, not a word about my medical records. Can't do that. It's newsworthy. Then I mention it myself in the interview. I control when and how that information comes out, not you. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Fair enough. What else? The interview happens at the cabin. No camera crew. Just you, me, and a recorder. And you don't publish anything I don't approve first. I can't give you editorial control. Then we're done. Claire started to hang up. Wait, okay, you can review it before publication. But if you change the facts, the deal's off. I won't change facts. I just want to make sure you're not twisting my words. When? Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. And Rachel, if you bring anyone else, if you try to record video without permission, if you do anything I don't explicitly agree to, I will unleash 240 extremely loyal bikers on you and your career. Are we clear? Crystal. Claire hung up and immediately called Damon. He answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. What's wrong? I need you here tomorrow morning, 7:30, before the reporter shows up. What reporter? Claire told him everything. The blackmail, the medical records, the impossible choice. When she finished, Damon was silent for so long that she thought he'd hung up. Say something, she pleaded. I'm trying to decide whether to kill her or respect her hustle. Damon, I'll be there at 7 with backup. No backup, just you. I need to do this, but I need to know someone's watching my 6. Claire, you don't have to do this. We can shut her down. Make the story disappear. For how long? She's right. It'll come out eventually. Better I tell it myself than let them turn me into whatever they want me to be. Damon sighed heavily. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's becoming your signature move. Despite everything, Claire almost laughed. Yeah, it is. She spent the rest of the night writing in the journal. Not the interview answers she refused to rehearse, but the truth. The whole messy, complicated truth about why she'd run toward that gun. It wasn't heroism. It was habit. 12 years of training that made running toward danger feel safer than running away. It wasn't selflessness. It was muscle memory. The same instinct that had made her dive on grenades in Afghanistan, pull wounded soldiers from burning vehicles, stand between insurgents and civilians. She'd never turned it off when she came home, never learned how to be a civilian. The soldier in her head was still at war, still scanning for threats, still ready to sacrifice herself at a moment's notice. And that night in this parking lot, when she saw that gun, every alarm in her combat-trained brain had screamed threat, and her body had moved before her conscious mind could question it. There was no nobility in it, just programming. The question was whether the American public was ready for that truth. Damon arrived at 7:23 a.m. in his truck alone as promised. He found Claire sitting on the porch steps drinking coffee and looking like she hadn't slept. "You look like hell," he said. "I feel like hell." He sat down beside her, and for a while they just watched the morning mist burn off the valley. "You know you don't owe anyone your story, right?" Damon said finally. "You don't owe them explanations or justifications or anything else." "I know, but if I don't tell it, someone else will. At least this way it's the truth. Your truth, not the whole truth. Nobody gets that but you." Claire turned to look at him. "What would you do if you were me?" Damon thought for a long moment. "I'd probably tell them all to go to hell and disappear for real. Change my name. Move to Montana. Start over. But I'm not you, and you're not built to run forever. You're built to stand and fight even when you shouldn't." He smiled slightly. "It's what makes you dangerous and valuable." "I don't feel dangerous. I feel scared. Scared people do the bravest things because they do it despite the fear, not without it." Rachel Torres's silver sedan pulled up at exactly 8 a.m. She emerged carrying nothing but a small digital recorder and a leather notebook. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Hayes," she nodded to each of them. "Thank you for agreeing to this." "Let's get something straight," Damon said, standing up and using every inch of his considerable height. "You hurt her with this story, you twist her words, you publish anything she doesn't approve, and I will make it my personal mission to ensure you never work in journalism again." "Clear." Rachel met his gaze without flinching. "Clear. But I should tell you I've been threatened by people scarier than bikers. I'm still here because I tell the truth, and the truth protects itself." "The truth can be a weapon," Claire said quietly, "and weapons hurt people. I should know." Rachel's expression softened slightly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to give you a voice. Everyone says that right before they betray you. Then I guess I'll have to prove I'm different." They went inside. Claire sat in the worn armchair by the window. Rachel took the wooden chair across from her. Damon leaned against the wall by the door, arms crossed, a silent sentinel. Rachel set the recorder on the table between them, but didn't turn it on yet. "Before we start," she said, "I want you to know I killed the PTSD story completely. It's gone." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because you're right. Your medical records are your business, and using them as blackmail was wrong." Rachel looked genuinely uncomfortable for the first time. "I got desperate, wanted the story so badly I stopped thinking about the person behind it. I'm sorry." The apology caught Claire off guard. "You're still going to write about me, though." "Yeah, but only what you choose to tell me. Nothing more." Claire studied Rachel's face, looking for the lie, finding nothing but exhaustion and what might be actual regret. "Okay," she said finally, "let's do this." Rachel clicked on the recorder. "Tell me about the moment you decided to run toward the gun," she began. And Claire, for the first time since it happened, told the complete truth. She talked about seeing Damon in the parking lot, about the flash of metal in the alley, about the way time seemed to slow and speed up simultaneously. "I didn't decide anything," Claire said. "Decision implies choice, implies thought. There was none of that. I saw a weapon aimed at a person and my training kicked in. In Afghanistan, when you see a threat, you engage. You don't wait. You don't analyze. You act." So it was instinct. It was programming. 12 years of it, and I couldn't turn it off even though I've been home for 8 years. "Do you regret it?" Claire was quiet for a long time. "I regret that it happened at all. I regret that some kid thought shooting a stranger would make him a man. I regret that I got famous for doing what any decent person should do. But do I regret saving Damon's life?" She glanced at him. "No, never." "What about the PTSD?" Rachel asked gently. "I know I said I wouldn't publish your records, but you mentioned earlier you wanted to address it yourself." Claire's hands tightened on the armrests. This was the moment. The choice between continuing to hide or stepping into brutal honesty. "I was diagnosed with PTSD after my second tour," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. "I didn't accept the diagnosis at first. Thought it meant I was weak, broken, so I refused treatment, refused medication. Just kept pushing forward because that's what soldiers do. And now I understand that PTSD isn't weakness. It's what happens when your brain tries to process things it was never designed to handle. Combat, death, the constant threat of violence. Your mind adapts to survive, and when the threat is gone, the adaptations remain. Is that why you ran toward the gun? Because your mind still thought you were in combat? Partly, but also because somewhere in my programming, protecting others became more important than protecting myself, and that's a hard thing to unlearn. Rachel was quiet processing. Then, what do you want people to know? If you could say one thing to everyone watching this story unfold, what would it be? Claire looked out the window at the valley below, at the peace she'd found in isolation, at the life that was waiting for her when she was ready to reclaim it. "I'd tell them I'm not a hero," she said finally. "I'm just a soldier who never learned how to stop being one. And if that makes me brave, then bravery and damage are the same thing. Because the only reason I could run toward that gun is because I've been running toward danger so long, I forgot how to run toward safety." She turned back to Rachel. "I tell them that war doesn't end when you come home. It follows you, lives in your bones, shows up in parking lots and grocery stores and moments when normal people see danger and run away, and broken soldiers see danger and run toward it because that's all we know how to do anymore." Her voice cracked. "And I tell them that if they want to call me a hero for being damaged in a very specific way, then they better be ready to take care of all the other damaged veterans out there who don't get viral videos and news coverage when they do brave things every single day just by staying alive." The silence that followed was absolute. Rachel's hands were shaking as she wrote notes. Damon's eyes were suspiciously bright, and Claire felt like she'd just torn open a wound she'd been protecting for 8 years. "That's the story," Claire whispered. "That's the truth. You can use it or lose it, but that's all I've got." Rachel reached over and turned off the recorder. "That's everything I need," she said softly. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Claire nodded, too exhausted to speak. Rachel packed up her equipment and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned back. "For what it's worth, you're exactly the hero they think you are. You just don't realize it yet." Then she was gone, leaving Claire and Damon alone in the cabin with the weight of everything that had just been said. "You okay?" Damon asked. "Ask me in a week." "Fair enough." They sat together in silence as the morning sun climbed higher, burning away the mist and revealing the world below in sharp, unforgiving detail. Rachel's article went live 72 hours later at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Claire knew because her phone, which she'd finally turned back on, started vibrating so violently it fell off the nightstand and woke her up. She grabbed it and saw the headline on the Seattle Times homepage. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a soldier who never stopped fighting," the Claire Bennett interview. Her hands were shaking as she read her own words transformed into print. Rachel had kept her promise. Every quote was accurate, every detail approved. But seeing it there permanent in public made Claire's stomach turn. The article didn't paint her as a flawless hero. It showed her as damaged, honest, human. A woman still fighting a war that had ended 8 years ago. Within an hour, the story had been picked up by major outlets. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, The Washington Post. Everyone who'd been using her as a political symbol suddenly had to grapple with the fact that she was a real person with real trauma. The comments section exploded in ways Claire hadn't anticipated. Veterans started sharing their own stories, talking about PTSD, about the inability to turn off combat instincts, about feeling broken and heroic at the same time. "This is the most honest thing I've read about coming home from war. Thank you for your service and your truth. I've been home for 6 years and I still can't walk through a parking lot without checking for threats. This article made me feel less alone. My dad was Vietnam, never talked about it. Died never talking about it. Claire Bennett just said everything he couldn't. God bless her." Claire read comments until her vision blurred, tears streaming down her face. She'd expected judgment, expected people to use her admission of PTSD as proof she was unstable, dangerous, unreliable. Instead, they were thanking her for being honest, for putting words to things they'd felt but never expressed. Damon called at 8 a.m. "You see it?" "Yeah, I see it." "How you feeling?" "Terrified, relieved, like I just jumped out of a plane without checking if my parachute was packed." The parachute opened. "You're getting nothing but support out here. I'm getting death threats too. Saw at least a dozen telling me I should have died in Afghanistan. Block them. They don't matter. They matter to me. Damon was quiet for a moment. You ready to come home? The question hit Claire harder than she expected. Home. She'd been hiding in the mountains for 2 weeks, and part of her wanted to stay forever. Safe, isolated, protected. But another part, the part that had run toward that gun, knew that hiding wasn't living. Yeah, she said finally. I'm ready. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. There is something you need to see first. What? You'll find out when you get here. He hung up before she could ask more questions. Claire spent her last day at the cabin packing up the journal she'd filled with painful honesty. Every page was a wound she'd torn open and examined. Every entry was a piece of herself she'd tried to understand. She left the cabin, cleaned the firewood, stacked the generator, topped off, ready for the next person who needed to disappear. As she stood on the porch, taking one last look at the valley, Claire realized she was different than when she'd arrived. Not healed healing took longer than 2 weeks, but maybe starting to accept that broken and brave could exist in the same body. Damon arrived at dawn with coffee and pastries from a bakery 2 hours away. Thought you could use real food, he said, handing her the bag. They ate in comfortable silence as he drove down the mountain, leaving the isolation behind. With every mile closer to Blackwater Bay, Claire's anxiety ratcheted higher. What's going to happen when we get there? She asked. You'll see. Damon, I swear to God, if you're throwing me a surprise party. It's not a party, trust me. They pulled into town just after 9 a.m. Claire expected to see reporters camped outside her apartment again. Expected chaos and cameras and people shouting her name. Instead, the streets were quiet, normal, like nothing had changed. Damon drove past her apartment and headed toward the harbor. He parked outside the marine repair shop where Claire had worked before her life exploded. Why are we here? She asked. Because someone wants to talk to you. Before Claire could respond, the shop door opened, and her boss, a gruff 60-year-old named Frank, who'd given her a job when no one else would, stepped out. Bennett, he said, you look like hell. Good to see you too, Frank. He crossed his arms, studying her the way he studied broken engines. You planning on coming back to work, or did fame make you too good for fixing boats? Claire felt tears prick her eyes. I thought you'd have replaced me by now. Can't replace you. You're the only one who knows how to deal with the Morrison's yacht engine without strangling them. He paused. Your job's waiting, whenever you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Just showing up when you can. I don't know if I can do normal anymore. Normal's overrated anyway. Just come back when you're ready to get your hands dirty and stop thinking so much. Frank went back inside waiting for a response, leaving Claire staring at the shop with something that felt dangerously close to hope. That's not all, Damon said. He drove another 3 blocks and pulled up to a small building Claire had never noticed before. The sign read Blackwater Bay Veterans Resource Center, opening soon. Claire's breath caught. What is this? Your interview started something. People read about PTSD and veterans struggling and decided to do something about it. Local VFW chapter partnered with the town council. They're opening a resource center, counseling, job placement, support groups, all free for veterans. Because of me. Because of you being honest about your struggles. Made people realize how many veterans are out there suffering in silence. Claire climbed out of the truck and walked to the front door. Through the window, she could see construction happening inside. Fresh paint, new furniture, computers being set up. A handwritten sign in the window read, Grand Opening November 15th. All veterans welcome. No judgment, just support. They want you there for the opening, Damon said, coming up beside her room. Want you to cut the ribbon, give a speech. Claire's hands were shaking. I can't give speeches. I can barely string 2 sentences together without falling apart. Then fall apart. Show them it's okay to be broken and still show up. Before Claire could respond, a voice called out from down the street. Claire Bennett. She turned to see an older man approaching. He had to be in his 70s, wearing a Vietnam veteran baseball cap and using a cane. Yes, sir. The man stopped in front of her, his eyes bright with tears. I just wanted to shake your hand. My son served in Iraq, came home with PTSD, wouldn't get help, thought it made him weak. His voice cracked. He killed himself 3 years ago. And I've been angry at him ever since. Angry that he didn't ask for help, that he didn't trust us enough to let us in. He wiped his eyes with a shaking hand. Then I read your interview, and I understood. He wasn't weak. He was programmed, just like you said, and he couldn't turn it off any more than you can. The man grabbed Claire's good hand and shook it firmly. Thank you for helping me understand my boy, even if it's too late to save him. He walked away before Claire could respond, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with tears streaming down her face. That's going to keep happening, Damon said quietly. People seeing themselves in your story, finding meaning in your honesty. I don't want to be responsible for other people's healing. You're not responsible, you're just a mirror, reflecting back the truth they needed to hear. They drove to Claire's apartment next. The reporters were gone, but there was a pile of mail stacked outside her door. Letters, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Claire carried them inside and sat on her couch, opening them one by one. Thank you letters from veterans, from families of veterans, from people who'd never served but understood struggle. A letter from a woman whose daughter had saved a stranger from a house fire and later died from her injuries. Reading about you helped me understand why she ran in when everyone else ran out. Thank you for giving me that closure. A letter from a teacher whose student had PTSD from childhood abuse. Your words about being programmed help me understand what he's going through. I'm getting him the help he needs now. A letter from an elderly woman who'd lost her husband in Korea. He never talked about the war, died with it locked inside. Your honesty would have meant everything to him. It means everything to me now. Claire read until her hands were shaking and her vision was blurred. Every letter was a piece of proof that her honesty had mattered, that her vulnerability had created space for others to be vulnerable too. The last letter was from Colonel Marcus Williams. The return address was Pentagon letterhead. Claire, I've spent 30 years in the Army watching soldiers sacrifice pieces of themselves for their country. But I've never seen anyone sacrifice their privacy and peace the way you just did. That interview took more courage than any firefight. You showed the world what real strength looks like, admitting you're broken and standing tall anyway. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. You've earned more than gratitude. You've earned family. Semper Fi, Colonel Marcus Williams. Claire set the letter down and let herself cry. Not sad tears, not scared tears, just the overwhelming release of someone who'd been holding everything in for too long. Damon had left at some point, giving her privacy, but when the tears finally stopped, she found a note on her kitchen counter. Sunday dinner at Grinder's mom's house. 5 p.m., non-negotiable. She's already set a place for you. Welcome home, D. The next few days passed in a blur of activity that felt both foreign and familiar. Claire returned to work at the shop, losing herself in the simple mechanics of fixing engines. Frank didn't ask questions, didn't push, just handed her wrenches and let her work. The other employees treated her normally, which was the greatest gift anyone could give. No hero worship, no awkward questions. Just, hey Bennett, the Morrison's yacht is making that noise again, and can you check this bilge pump? Claire fell back into routine and discovered that routine was healing in its own way. But the world hadn't forgotten her. Media requests still came in daily, speaking invitations, book deals, movie offers. Claire turned them all down. She told her story once honestly and completely. That was enough. Sunday arrived too quickly. Claire stood outside a modest house in the suburbs, holding a store-bought pie and trying to work up the courage to knock. The door opened before she could. Grinder's mother, a tiny woman who couldn't be more than 5 feet tall, stood there beaming. You must be Claire, coming in. You're letting all the heat out. Inside the house was chaos. At least 20 people crowded into the living room and kitchen. Bikers and their families, kids running around, the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread. Everyone, Grinder's mother called out. This is Claire. Make her feel welcome. A chorus of greetings rang out. Handshakes, hugs. Someone handed Claire a beer. Someone else took her pie and disappeared into the kitchen with it. Damon appeared at her elbow. Told you it wasn't a party. This is definitely a party. Okay, fine, but it's a family party. Different thing. Jenny found Claire in the crowd and steered her to the kitchen where the women were gathered. How's the shoulder? Healing slowly. Good. You're young. You'll bounce back. Jenny handed her a glass of wine. Fair warning, Grinder's mom is going to ask you 15,000 questions and feed you until you explode. It's her love language. She was right. Over dinner, Grinder's mother interrogated Claire about her life, her family, her plans. But it wasn't invasive. It was genuine interest from someone who decided Claire belonged, whether Claire agreed or not. After dinner, when the kids were playing outside and the adults were scattered around the living room, Damon pulled Claire aside. "I got something for you," he said. He handed her a small velvet box. Claire's eyes widened. "Damon, if you're proposing, Jesus Christ, no, just open it." Inside was a silver pendant, not a Hells Angels insignia, not a military medal, just a simple design, two hands clasped in solidarity. "It's from all of us," Damon said quietly. "The chapter, the extended family, everyone who rode that night. We wanted you to have something to remember that you're not alone anymore." Claire's throat was tight. "I can't accept this." "Too bad. Already got your name engraved on the back." She flipped it over and read the inscription, "Claire Bennett, family by choice. October 18th, 2024. The tears came fast and hard. Damon pulled her into a hug while she sobbed against his leather cut. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm sorry, I'm such a mess." "You're not a mess, you're human. There's a difference." When she finally pulled away, every eye in the room was on her. But they weren't judging. They were understanding. Because family meant accepting the broken pieces along with the whole ones. The grand opening of the Veterans Resource Center happened on a cold November morning with gray skies threatening rain. Claire stood outside the building, holding giant ceremonial scissors, surrounded by news cameras and town officials, and what looked like half of Blackwater Bay. The mayor was giving a speech about supporting veterans and community responsibility. Claire wasn't listening. She was scanning the crowd, seeing faces she recognized. Frank from the shop, Jenny and Grinder, Marcus, Damon standing in the front row with his daughter beside him, the same daughter whose soccer game he had almost missed because someone tried to kill him. And veterans, dozens of them, young and old, men and women, all of them looking at Claire like she was the reason they felt safe enough to be here. The mayor finished his speech and handed Claire the microphone. "I'm supposed to say something inspiring," Claire began, her voice shaking. "But I'm not good at inspiring, I'm just good at surviving. And some days that's all any of us can do." She looked directly at the veterans in the crowd. "I know a lot of you are here because you read my interview, because you saw someone admit they were broken and thought maybe it was okay to be broken too. And I want you to know it is okay. You're not weak for struggling. You're not damaged beyond repair. You're just programmed different. And this place," she gestured to the building behind her own, "this place is where we learn to reprogram together." Claire paused, collecting herself. "I got shot saving a stranger's life. And everyone called me a hero, but the real heroes are the people who show up here today admitting they need help, because asking for help is harder than running toward any bullet." She raised the scissors. "So let's open this place and start helping each other. Because that's what we do. We stand up for each other. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She cut the ribbon and the crowd erupted in applause. As people filed inside for the open house, an older veteran approached Claire. He was wearing a Korea War veteran hat and leaning heavily on a walker. "I never got help," he said quietly. "Spent 60 years trying to forget instead of heal. But my grandson just got back from Syria. And because of you, he's already signed up for counseling. You saved him from my mistakes." He saluted her, a shaky, imperfect salute from a body that had lived too long with invisible wounds. Claire saluted back, tears streaming down her face. That night, Claire sat on her apartment balcony watching the harbor lights reflect off the water. Her shoulder still ached. Her PTSD still flared. She still couldn't walk through parking lots without scanning for threats. But she wasn't hiding anymore. Wasn't pretending to be whole when she was broken. Wasn't ashamed of the programming that made her run toward danger. Because she'd learned something in the weeks since that gunshot changed everything. Broken people could still save lives. Damaged soldiers could still be heroes. And admitting you were struggling didn't make you weak, it made you honest. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damon. "Chapter meeting tomorrow night, you coming?" Claire smiled and typed back, "I'm not a biker." His response came immediately. "No, but your family. Big difference. See you at 7. She looked at the silver pendant hanging around her neck. Family by choice. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by the kind of loyalty that only came from standing together when the world tried to tear you apart. Claire had spent 8 years trying to leave the soldier behind, trying to be normal, trying to forget what war had programmed into her bones. But maybe the answer wasn't forgetting. Maybe it was accepting, using the programming for good instead of fighting it, running toward danger when it meant saving lives, standing up when everyone else sat down, being broken and brave at exactly the same time. Because that night in the parking lot when instinct had made her sprint toward a gun, she hadn't just saved Damon's life, she'd saved her own, had finally found a purpose that made sense, a family that understood, a reason to stop hiding and start living. The road had called her, and this time instead of running away, she'd answered. And as Claire sat there watching the lights dance on the water, she understood something she'd been too scared to admit before. She wasn't just a soldier who never stopped fighting. She was a warrior who'd finally found something worth fighting for. The truth that broken people deserved love. Damaged veterans deserved support, and heroes came in all forms, especially the ones who admitted they were struggling while still showing up to help others anyway. The bullet had torn through her shoulder, but it had also torn down the wall she'd built around her heart. And in the space left behind, something new had grown. Not healing, not yet, but hope. And hope was enough to start rebuilding a life worth living. Claire closed her eyes and let the harbor wind wash over her, carrying away the last remnants of shame and fear. Tomorrow she'd go to work, fix engines, attend the chapter meeting, continue being the complicated, damaged, brave person she'd always been, but had finally stopped apologizing for. Because the world didn't need perfect heroes. It needed honest ones. And Claire Bennett, broken soldier and reluctant legend, was finally ready to be exactly that.